Now, if someone had told me 10 years ago that I would leave a full-time college faculty position to become a freelancer, I probably would have laughed. After all, I am not a risk taker by nature, and I had what many people considered a dream job. I was a full-time associate professor at a college. I had a title. I was an associate professor of business and technology. And overall, I was happy there. I enjoyed teaching. I enjoyed working with the students. I really enjoyed designing courses and helping people learn and grow. And in some ways, there was a certain prestige that came with being a professor. From the outside, it looked like I had built a stable, successful career. Hi, I'm Jennifer. I'm with the Freelance Shift, and I help freelancers and solopreneurs learn skills that are going to help save them time and energy to build a successful freelance business. Now, in my circumstance, I had this job that from the outside looked absolutely perfect. But there was a problem. I wasn't 100% fulfilled anymore. And in all honesty, I wasn't making enough money. And that was a big factor. When I pursued teaching at the college level, I didn't realize that college professors made as little as they do. In fact, at least in the area that I'm in New England, if you teach at, a regular 4-year college, you're going to make less than a public school teacher who's making pre-K to 12. That really surprised me, even though I was in the field. I came from pre-K to 12. I assumed that because you needed additional degrees to teach at the college level, that you would be better compensated. That was not the case. Now, some may argue that you had a more flexible schedule, but regardless, the yearly paycheck was less at the college level. And at the time, I was a single mom raising 2 daughters. Well, I'm still a single mom raising 2 daughters, but obviously they were younger at this time. And at the time, they attended a private school that they absolutely loved. And I was determined to keep them there. Like almost all parents, I wanted to give the kids stability while also giving them opportunities to thrive. And I felt like they could do that in that environment that they were in. But of course, I had to consider the cost of tuition. And the reality is that my professor's salary wasn't stretching as far as I needed it to. And I think that for years, I convinced myself that the trade-off was worth it. I had job security, benefits, a predictable paycheck. And those things obviously mattered, especially as a single mom who was supporting 2 daughters. But as time went on, I realized that I had reached a point where I wanted more, where I needed more. I wanted not only to make more money, but I also wanted to be challenged in new ways. I wanted to solve different kinds of problems. In my case, I made this decision after COVID. And I think that, many of us who went through the workforce during COVID did have some realizations of different types. And for me, I just realized that I had been in the classroom a long time. I had been there a couple of decades. And I wanted more freedom to choose the projects that I worked on and the organizations that I partnered with. I also wanted to have some control over my schedule. And I did want the opportunity to earn more money than my salary at the college was going to allow me to earn. So I can tell you that there wasn't one dramatic moment that made me leave. It was a series of small realizations that I had. Basically, I realized that I developed valuable skills over the years in the classroom and leading different initiatives that extended far beyond the college campus that I was teaching at. I knew how to facilitate conversations. I knew how to design learning experiences. I knew how to manage projects. I could coach professionals. And overall, I could help organizations solve problems. As I mentioned, I worked in several different environments. Even though I was always in the classroom, I taught middle school and high school in one town, and then I went to another town and state to teach, well, to work as a school administrator. And then I worked part-time at the college level when my children were really young, and then transitioned to another college where I taught full-time once my kids entered preschool. So I did see a lot of different ways that various organizations did things. And those weren't just academic skills that I had. I felt like they were consulting skills. But recognizing my skills, I'll admit it didn't automatically give me the courage to leave. I was afraid to take the leap, and I procrastinated. I thought about it well before I actually did it. Now, at the time, I wasn't that young or new in my career. I was in my 40s. I was a single mom raising 2 daughters, and I'd spent years building my reputation and my career in academia. So starting over at this stage of my life did feel incredibly risky, because as a single mom with 2 daughters depending on me, the stakes felt incredibly high. I'd ask myself questions that literally kept me up at night saying, what if I can't acquire enough work consistently? What if I land one great contract and then I can't get the next one, and by then I've already resigned from my role? What if clients stop reaching out to me? What if there's a downturn in the economy? How would I pay the bills? How would I keep my daughters in the private school that they loved? And again, those questions really did haunt me much more than now in retrospect I should have let them haunt me. But we all have those moments, I think, or many of us at least have those moments. I think anyone considering freelancing has some version of those same fears that I have when they're first considering it. We worry about inconsistent income because we've spent years relying on a paycheck when it arrives every week or every 2 weeks. And we just assume that freelancing means constantly wondering where that next client will come from. But I really had to change my mindset. It was a huge mindset shift for me. I had to start looking at my situation differently, because I asked myself, was my full-time job really as secure as I believed? The answer was not necessarily. Higher education had changed dramatically over the years. Small private colleges across New England were starting to close or merge at an accelerating pace, especially when the pandemic did hit. And even colleges that were remaining open were cutting some programs and majors based on enrollment and overall budgets. Now, I think one of the things that changed some of my mindset was when the department that I was primarily involved with at the time did eliminate the information technology management program as a major. It still did have it as a concentration. There were still required courses. So it's not that it put my job in danger per se. It just changed things a little bit and just made me sit and reflect on the situation overall. It was basically a reminder that academic programs are not guaranteed to last forever. And that's when I really had a shift in mindset, when it changed for me, because I realized the security that I thought that I had wasn't really true security at all, because companies restructure and colleges eliminate majors, universities merge, budgets get cut, positions disappear. I don't think that any career is immune from change. And when I realized that, I stopped asking myself, what if freelancing isn't stable enough? And instead started asking, what if depending on one employer is actually the bigger risk? And that question did change everything for me. I realized that security isn't about who signs your paycheck. It's about having skills that people are willing to pay for. And then once I embraced that mindset shift, everything did start to move and change. I was able to find a long-term consulting contract that gave me a solid foundation while I started to build my freelance business. So my first projects allowed me to use the skills that I'd spent years developing. I basically started facilitating various trainings, designing learning experiences for various companies, and just helping organizations solve problems relating to training and development, implementation, and consistency in the program, and actually running the program once it's established and you've moved forward with that. And all of this ended up being a powerful reminder for me that I wasn't starting over. I was just applying my expertise in a different way. That's what I like to tell myself anyway. Now, while this was going on, I was networking relentlessly. I reconnected with former colleagues. I made sure that I met new people who were involved in the space that I'm in. I attended mostly virtual events at that time because of the nature of COVID, and I let others know that I was available for consulting opportunities. And at that point, one client just became another opportunity led to the next. And slowly, freelancing stopped feeling like a huge risk and started feeling like a little bit of freedom. I was better able to control my income by choosing to work with certain companies or not work with certain companies. And I did have some flexibility over my schedule. I'll admit that it wasn't complete flexibility. I do tend to work a lot to meet my income goals, but I did not have anyone telling me that I couldn't take the second week of August off. That was something that I could decide for myself, for instance. And I think most importantly, I was able to continue providing for my daughters and keep them in the school that they loved. And that was my why. That continues to be my why. So looking back, I can say that the shift that I made is one of the best decisions that I made, and one I'm proud of. I'm really happy that I didn't let fear take over and that I did it, and I did it successfully. I took that chance on myself, and it wasn't just about building a different career. It was actually about creating more opportunities for my family. And today, fast forward several years, I've been freelancing now full-time for, I guess, over 5 years. I've had the privilege of doing meaningful work with a lot of different companies. As I said, I don't put all my eggs in one basket, and I do tend to work probably a little bit more than the average person to meet those income goals. But I feel it's so much more rewarding than spending the rest of my career in one place. Now, do I miss the traditional classroom? Yes, sometimes I do. I think that I am a teacher by nature. I have always taught. When I was 16 years old, they made me the store trainer for the restaurant that I worked for at the time. I think it's just part of who I am. But I haven't left education behind. I've really just found a new classroom. Because today I teach through not only the facilitation that I do, but through consulting and coaching and writing and creating content that helps other professionals navigate through their own career transitions. As many of you know, I do a lot of AI training. I'd previously taught a lot of technology classes. That was sort of my niche. And that's naturally evolved into AI training. And it's very rewarding when people tell you that what you've designed or what you're facilitating is helping them navigate the transition into this new landscape in their professional careers with AI. So it's basically, in my circumstances, that I created something better for myself, something that allowed growth and flexibility and more financial opportunities, that I moved into a career that I could shape instead of one that someone else was mostly molding for me. So if you're thinking about freelancing but wonder whether you're too established to make the change, use this video as encouragement. The skills that you've spent years building are more valuable than you realize. And you don't have to completely start over. You just have to apply your expertise in a different way. So if I could leave a full-time associate professor position in my 40s as a single mom of 2 daughters and build a successful freelance career, there's a really good chance that you can too. And that said, maybe your next career chapter isn't about finding another employer. Maybe it's about becoming your own. So here's my challenge. Hang your freelance shingle. You don't have to quit your job tomorrow or have every detail figured out. You can just put yourself out there, reach out to your network, let people know what you do, and pursue that gig that seems just a little bit outside your comfort zone. Because you may discover that someone has been looking exactly for the expertise that you have to offer. And know that although the hardest part isn't finding the work, although the hardest part is probably the mindset shift, you are capable of taking the first step. And your next career chapter may be waiting for you on the other side of it. Best of luck. I hope to see you the next time. If you want to check out some other videos in this series, then please do. Take care, everyone.